Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here tonight. Hello. Thank you all for joining us this evening for the Reading is Fundamental National Coalition webinar on race, equity, and inclusion, which is proudly supported by Macy's Gives. So shout out to Macy's. Thank you, Macy's, for sponsoring this. I'm Charnae Gordon, a diversity and inclusion expert, children's book author, content creator, and I'm also the founder of Here We Read, as well as my nonprofit, 50 States, 50 Books. And I'm also a podcast host. So one of the cool things that I get to do with Reading is Fundamental is I am a member of their National Advisory Board for their race, equity, and inclusion initiative. So I'm thrilled to be here tonight for this two-part series this is the first session in the series called Diversify Your Bookshelf. Tonight, I am joined by Krista Aronson and Barbara Flores. I'll introduce them in a second. But first, I just want to go over a few quick housekeeping rules. All participants are muted. Please feel free to use the question box. There's a question box here if you have a question for the organizer or for any of the panelists. And we have a bit of time at the end for some Q&A. And if we don't get to your question, we will have a member of the RIF team reach out directly via the Literacy Network email address displayed on the screen as well. So if you have a question tonight that is not answered, someone from RIF will get back to you. So with all of that said, I'm thrilled to be joined tonight by Krista Aronson and Barbara Flores. I'm going to introduce them one at a time. Dr. Krista Aronson is the Associate Dean of the Faculty and Professor of Psychology at Bates College. And she's also the Director of Diverse Book Finder. If you don't know about that resource, you will want to check it out. You can find it at diversebookfinder.org. Is that correct, Krista?
Correct, yes, thank you.
Yes. And Dr. Barbara Flores, she is a school board member for San Bernardino City Unified School District. She is also professor for the Reading and Literacy Program at California State University in San Bernardino. Barbara is also an author and the president of the California Association of Bilingual Education. So welcome, Barbara, as well.
Thank you, Charnae.
Yes, so RIF's goal for hosting the National Reading Coalitions is to convene subject matter experts such as Krista and Barbara to enable productive and insightful discussions to explore various topics that intersect with children's literacy. The previous National Reading Coalition event focused on the intersection of children's literacy and workplace readiness. Tonight, our focus is on the importance of the role of books in addressing issues of race, equity, and inclusion. RIF's own Race, Equity, and Inclusion initiative strives to use the power of books for positive impact and change. Tonight, our discussion will focus specifically on diverse books, which is such a broad topic. In particular, this panel of subject matter experts will explore how we define and identify diverse books, how we add more diverse books to school and home libraries, and provide a foundational guide on what, how, and why diverse books matter for educators and families to share with their children in their lives. And don't forget, we will end tonight's webinar a few minutes early, where I will read aloud my new book, a friend like you. And I hope at the end you'll have some of your children join us for story time. So we have a lot to get to tonight. So let's jump right in and get right to it. You ready, Krista? You ready, Barbara?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. All right. So let's open up this discussion by thinking about diversity and inclusion and looking back to the book bans of the past. And of course, we have to talk about the current book ban, or the recent book ban that was going on in York County, Pennsylvania, where diverse books were banned, as we all know by now. And if you don't know, that recently happened. This seems like a key time to talk about what is the value of diversifying bookshelves for children. So I know that's a tough question, but what is the value in doing that? Whether we're diversifying a bookshelf for a home library or a school library? Who wants to take it?
I'm happy to jump in and talk a little bit about that. Is that all right, Barbara? If I go first?
You may go first.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and something that I've given a lot of thought to as a psychologist, right? And so my training is in how we come to understand ourselves within a racialized environment, how we form our own identities, and the connection between those identities and real world outcomes, like how we do in school, how we feel about ourselves as humans in terms of our own self-esteem. So, you know, I do a lot of this work as the director of the Diverse Book Finder and thinking about how to translate 50 plus years of research on this topic into something that's useful for parents and educators. So when I think about why diverse books matter, and when I talk about why they matter, because this is a conversation that we have to have again and again and again in different environments, in different contexts, to highlight why these books are important, why we need to fight for them, why we need to have them on our bookshelves. And I put together my thoughts for the Beautiful Blackbird Children's Book Festival on this topic, and maybe the folks working behind the scenes can drop that link in there, and I can share that with you and talk you through it a little bit. So these books matter because they combat childhood bias, first and foremost. One of the questions that I get asked most frequently when I travel the country and talk about this topic is, you know, but children are colorblind, right? They don't see race. And we know from 50 plus years of research that this just is not true, that children are capable of seeing the physical differences that have been used to create racial categories like skin tone and eye shape during infancy. And that children in that infant stage form their ideas about what faces matter, depending on the faces that they're presented with most frequently. And they become attuned to the faces that they see more regularly, particularly if they're in racially homogeneous environments. That doesn't mean that children or infants are biased, but it means that they see it and they're developing attitudes about it that form the seeds or can potentially form the foundation for attitudes later in life. And so I always recommend to parents and educators who are working with infants, in order to push back on this, to use and expose children and infants to picture books that have real faces in them, faces that they don't get to see on a regular basis, and to attune to the inner features of those faces that they don't see more regularly, because that's the part when we put eye trackers on infants. I don't do that, but others do. They notice that when infants are presented with faces that they see less regularly, that they look around the outer edges and not towards the inner features. So really taking the time to draw a baby's attention to the nose and the mouth and the cheeks and the eyes for faces that they don't see more regularly can help push back on this idea that some faces matter more than other faces. So these books matter. They help combat childhood bias. In part also because during later life, they can be used to develop intercultural competence. And my own research has explored this using picture books that depict friendship across racial or cultural difference, we found that children who are exposed to books that depict positive relationships are more willing and open to having those relationships themselves, to forming friendships across difference. The research also shows that it reduces bias and prejudice among children when they read books that show children like them interacting with children who are different from them, having fun and playing together. That can be racial or cultural difference. It can also be any sort of meaningful social difference that children encounter on a regular basis.
Yeah.
The books matter because they develop literacy. When children read stories that reflect their own experiences that they can engage with, they demonstrate greater literacy skills, including information retention, and that matters. If you want children to be engaged with and motivated to read a book, it should reflect their own experiences. And books that reflect a diversity of experience make it easier for parents to read with their children. It makes them more drawn into the book and able to wrap context and have meaningful conversation around them. And so having diverse books available in the classroom and that children can bring home, or having them in your home, increases those opportunities for family reading experiences, which are really core to the development of early literacy. So, I mean, I think childhood bias, intercultural competence, developing literacy skills, forming positive identities of self, whether or not you come from a background that is minoritized or not within the US context, developing an understanding of who you are and how you fit within the broader society can be really beneficial and important. All of that's on that page with links to the research that can help you understand where those claims come from.
Yeah, perfect. And I see that the RIF team has already put the link down in the message box there for everyone to take a look at. So thank you, Krista, for that wealth of information, and I loved your answer. Barbara, did you have anything else to add to that?
It was really great, Krista. That's really very broad and very specific at the same time. I'm much older than you both are. I went to school in the 50s in elementary school. I never saw any pictures of Latinas or my African American, classmates or my Asian classmates ever. And so we were just, we felt we were invisible, by the way. And of course, because I spoke Spanish, I was discriminated against. We were punished and hit with rulers, pinch, our braids pulled, whatever, and we were never seen. And what you said, Krista, about our positive identities is very, very true. When I did encounter books, they were stereotypic. And we had, illustrations that were stereotypic of both Black and Asian and Latino kids. They and it was appalling. And of course we would say, we don't look like that, that's not who we are, et cetera. And so, as a teacher and then becoming a professor, I still saw a dearth of books in the 70s and the 80s, right? And I'm a literacy by literacy professor. I teach, literacy by literacy development and how kids come to know written language. And so I still didn't see books, So I'm the type of person that said, okay, then let's develop them. And I had this vision for 10 years, and I wanted the artists, our diverse artists, to depict the real us, right? The real kids, our real bodies, our real faces, our real, the way we look. Period. And this is our first book, and it's called In La Playa. And you see this child's body. This child's body is authentic. It has a little tummy, little really plump legs, right? And that's how we look. This is how our children look. And, she's at the beach. And this is my daughter. And so this was 1990, in the 1992. And then I said, okay, I want authentic pictures. So we started with photographs. I danced, your bailo, the rodeo. We had boys. Here's another little girl. We used photos, real photos. And then we also use depictions of real boys, you know, how they look. Here's a photo of a family. Well, this is our family. Also, you know, just everyday life that we have. Our food, one of our favorite foods is tamales, right? So we developed those. I also mentored artists from 100 Black men in Nashville, Tennessee, and some authors, African-American authors out in Nashville. And we created visions. I was behind the scenes. And it was a series of 40 books, of predictable books, but it depicted authentic, everyday life of our kids. And why is that important at the beginning of literacy? The kids have to see themselves, they have to see who they are, their families, and that they count, and that they are precious, and that that we value them. And what Krista said about you know, them seeing themselves, you know, in stories is really important for identity, identity formation, you know, all of the, and also, you know, respecting different cultures, and that every little kid needs to be, you know, seen as how they are, not just certain kids. And so that's my contribution. I think that we really need to do that. Our series is called Mas Piñata, and it's from Lee and Low, and it's about 186 titles in English and 186 in Spanish. So that's a lot. And so my wish is to do all cultures, right? And depict the kids and have our diverse artists, have all our ethnic artists depict our kids in our everyday situations. There's so much to do. And, you know, Lee and Low is probably the largest multicultural publisher in this country. And not just, you know, these are predictable books, these are leveled books and traditional stories, but they have wonderful books that depict everybody. So I think it's, well, anyway, I think what Dr. Aronson did was just set it up theoretically. I'm just providing, you know, the why it's important also, because our kids and our families deserve respect. They deserve the respect to be valued, to see themselves in books and in positive ways. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's amazing. And I love how you took it upon yourself to validate yourself, right? By writing all those amazing books. So amazing work there. All right. That was all amazing. All right. So next question. How would you advise that someone take diversity inventory of their bookshelf, right? That's another really big question. But say there's some families here who are watching, or some educators, and they're like, well, how do I want to diversify my bookshelf? How do I do it? Where do I start? Who wants to take? Krista, you want to take that one?
Sure, I'm happy to. I think that's a really important question. And one thing I learned when I started in this work with picture books is I learned very quickly that they're hard to find, and that has to do a lot with the tags and what librarians call metadata that get wrapped around them that are searchable in search engines. So, you know, families are having a hard time finding books. It's not you. It's the way that the system is organized that makes them difficult to uncover. A system that focuses on what's happening in the book more often than who is in the book. So when I think about taking a look at my bookshelf, which I do, and I also provide, through the Diverse Book Finder, we provide assistance to thousands of libraries around collection analysis using our collection analysis software, which we call our collection analysis tool, that's freely available to public and libraries across the country, public and school libraries across the United States. But using our framework, what we provide is information about who is on the bookshelf, the racial and cultural groups that are represented. But for me, that's only half of the story. We also provide information about what stories are being told about which groups, because it's not necessarily enough to have a group represented on a bookshelf if that group's whole humanity isn't included within the stories that children have access to. So for instance, when we first started using the collection analysis tool, or when we started piloting it in Maine with libraries across the state, one librarian learned that 2% of their collection featured human characters of color. This is their picture book collection on their bookshelf. And although I make no prescription about what that number should be, we felt like 2% was intuitively low. When we dug into using the software, what stories or what groups were represented within that 2%, we learned that 65% of those books featured characters of African descent, largely African-American slave-descended characters, and that all of the stories that were being told about that group had to do with slavery and oppression, right?
Yeah.
And so when I think of an analysis of a collection, I like to go and hit all of those levels. Book quality is another one, but I first think about who is on the shelf and what stories are being told. Is I start to target and think about what new stories do I need to introduce? And that's a combination of who and how. So a collection that focuses on slavery and oppression, civil rights era, et cetera, does share important information, and we need to tell these stories. But the unintentional message that it may send is that to be Black involves pain and suffering, and about things that happened long ago and far away. And we have to ask ourselves the question of whether or not that is an accurate message and the message that we're trying to transmit. So this librarian was able to say, so the next time I buy books for my collection, I need to expand. Maybe I'll lean away from stories with African descended characters for a little while and fill out representation in other categories. But when I do buy a book featuring an African character, I need to focus on other stories, other aspects of the Black experience in doing that. So Ashlina, thank you so much for dropping the links in. I think that there's one for the collection analysis tool, which again is a free resource that we provide for school and public libraries across the country that provides information about who is on the shelf and how and what stories are being told in order to plan for collection development and track growth and change, because reports can be run regularly so that you can look and see how you're tracking towards your goals for your community.
Perfect. So, okay, so yeah, great. So RIF team just dropped that link in for the collection. Did you call it collection analysis tool?
Yeah, it's the cat. We're the big bobcats, so it's the cat.
There we go. So there you have it. So you would recommend starting there as a good place for families or educators who are like, how am I going to do this? Yeah.
For school, for educators and public librarians, I would say that that's a really good place to start. For parents, I would say taking a look and critically thinking about who is on the shelf and what stories are being told, to think about whether or not there is breadth in multiple ways represented in the stories on your home shelf.
Okay, perfect. Barbara, anything to add? Or I can ask you a different question.
I just want to add, I think it's wonderful what you developed, Krista. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Who and what, and that's so important. I'm a little bit more, I do work with families and they want concrete books. And so, we do direct them to different publishers. And of course, I do direct them to Lee and Low. And since I'm a school board member, and most of the teachers that are there in San Bernardino, I taught over 32 years. So they are very well versed in terms of how they diversify, and all they want is money. Just give us money, so that we can purchase more books. And so that's going to be one of the questions that we talk about. That we talk about later. But I did provide a article by Joy Shioshita, Beyond Good Intention in Selecting Multicultural Literature, and she has 9 criteria, and I'll just talk about 5. And she basically says that we have to look at the accuracy of the story. Is it is a true depiction of the culture, which is really important. And, you know, and beware of stereotypes. We don't want to include stereotypes. You know, for a long time, the way they represented Latinos or Hispanics was, you know, a guy in huaraches, right, with a sombrero, you know, against a cactus. Oh my God. And I mean, that's like really disgusting, right? And so you do see some of that now and then, and you know, we take the opportunity to critique it. Are the settings accurate? You know, are they not stereotypic? You know, are the illustrations authentic? Are they not stereotypic as well? And are they realistic? And you know, is the story appealing? You know, is the story able to, you know, inspire or appeal? You know, share a lesson, you know, from the story. So those are just aspects. I think when we want to select, you know, stories for our kids, the one thing that is always problematic is access. Access, and also, you know, which books. You know, I have no idea of which books. And so I think we have a big job to develop. I think RIF would be, you know, I know we have a lot of multicultural titles, but we need to gather more so that parents can go and to those sites and see, and then the access, you know, do we do it digitally and also in print, right? We have to have both. So thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about funding, right? This is especially important, probably more so for educators who are at a school. They might want to diversify, you know, their classrooms or their school library, but they're like, we don't have any money. How do you recommend people make the ask? How do you use your financial resources to diversify your bookshelves?
Yeah.
You want
I'm
me
happy to go.
Oh, you
You
go.
can go first. Go ahead.
Okay. As a school board member, I was elected in 2008, so I've been on the board quite a long time. School boards have tremendous money, and I mean school districts, and people don't know that you know, priorities are set in terms of spending. And I think we need to reach out to the National School Boards Association, our state boards of education, and begin a campaign to, you know, highlight the need and necessity for access to multicultural, you know, diverse books for our children, and to provide the funding. There is funding, and that we as school board members can allocate and prioritize, you know, certain amounts of money for every teacher. In my district, we give every teacher, I think, $250. We start at $250, $500 a year just for materials. So if we were able to do that for just say books, right, that would also be fabulous, right? So that's one funding source. Another funding source is Rotary. Rotary Clubs, I don't know if everybody knows this, but Rotary Clubs raise money to buy books for kids, to give books. We have Bring Me a Book Foundation in California, who also raise money for that. We can also, you know, parents raise money through, but it's difficult to raise money for books in that way. I have this great idea, you guys, that our grocery stores, you know, our grocery stores, we all have to buy food. So why don't we trade in our receipts for so much money? If you have so much money, you get so many books. And then the grocery stores can take that off on their income tax. And so I mean, that would be such a great project all over the country to do that, so that our parents could have access to books.
Okay, Krista.
I love those ideas, Barbara. I didn't know about the Rotary Club, so thanks for that suggestion. I'll pass that along. You know, when I think about how to make the ask, I have to draw on my social science background and think about the research that really demonstrates that these books matter. They matter for the goals of education. They matter for literacy. They matter for academic efficacy or feelings of capability in school, which are so important for all ultimate or overall outcomes. So I would go and I would look at the resources and the link, you know, that I shared that really outlines and gives that evidence. Part of what I do in my role as a psychologist and as a public a community engaged researcher is be that bridge, help identify the links to the information that will help formulate the arguments that will matter to your community. So I work in a descriptive role and then, you know, not prescriptive. I won't tell you what to say, but I try and provide the information that will help you fill in the gaps that you need to in your argument. If you work at a school, you're a class in the classroom or in the library, using the collection analysis tool can also be helpful. I don't mean to, you know, promote it again, but it is the way that I come at this work in thinking about assessment goals and deliverables. And so if you can demonstrate, here's where we are, here's an argument for where we need to go, here are the books that we need, which you can identify through the report in the diverse book finder, here's how much it's going to cost. And here's how I can demonstrate the impact in terms of now the collection looks like this and we're growing. I find that in, you know, in my own grant writing and money seeking world to be the way that things move along. And so I share those resources in case those resonate in your communities as well.
Yeah, can you just so we have the right link in the message for people here, which link specifically are you talking about for making the ask for funding, just so the RIF people can get it in the right link in there?
Yeah, so I was referring to the link that's the Beautiful Blackbird Research and Data, which are the data that I compiled for that festival to help think about what's the research that supports why this is important, as well as the collection analysis tool link would also be relevant if you're a classroom teacher or if you are a school librarian or a public librarian.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I do want to save some time for our Q&A. So I'm going to ask you both one more question. If we can keep the responses maybe to like 2 minutes, maybe, that would be great. So let me say, we have so many questions. Wow. All right. You're surely both in tuned to new children's books. So let's do a speed book talk round. What is one book that you're reading right now, or one that's caught your attention, and one sentence to describe them? Who wants to go first?
I'll go
A book
first.
you're reading? Who? Oh, you want to go? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. This is one of my favorite books, Abuela's Weave, by Omar Castañeda. And it's about a young girl and her grandmother. Her grandmother's a weaver. And it's a riveting story about teaching and learning and beauty and culture and, you know, just how they work together and create beauty. You know, I don't know if you've ever been to Guatemala, but the tapestries, the huipiles, these women are geniuses with color and patterns and traditions, and it's just I just got chills saying that, but it's just a lovely book. And I knew the author. He passed away, but I knew him, and he was an immigrant to our country, and it's just gorgeous, beautiful, and very riveting. So Abuela's Weave. And then I just wanted to say one thing. I wrote a book called Mud Tortillas, and it's going to be in the link. And it's a true story. I was a brat, and I deceived my sister into eating a mud tortilla, and of course I got in trouble. But anyway, it's a really cute little story, and it's real. You would like it, Mud Tortillas.
Okay, thank you, Barbara.
That's great. I look forward. I'll keep an eye out for that, Barbara. You know, I want to get to folks' questions. I want to hear what they want to know, and so I'm going to say, Last year I had the opportunity to collaborate with some folks on the creation of a book list for Embrace Race, and maybe that can be dropped in the chat. You can take a look at the book list and those that we selected. They're all wonderful. And if you're not familiar with Embrace Race, I encourage you to take a look at their website and resources as well.
Okay, awesome.
Can you restate that again? What website was that?
Embrace Race, embracerace.org.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, awesome. All right, where are we? All right, so questions. Let me see. How do we get to our questions? Riff team, are you dropping the questions in the chat window? I'm not seeing a chat window. That's the only thing.
Charnay, this is Jennifer from the RIF team, if you can hear me, and I will share one of the questions that came in, which is with regard to how can the community support our schools and library in this work? So if you think about the community at large, even beyond the school building, how can they support this work?
It's a great question. As parents, I'm hearing kind of in the question, or maybe even just as community members.
While you're thinking, we have a lot of nonprofits in our area, and I think I would reach out to them so that we have a community campaign, literacy campaign, or we could, whatever we want to name it, building our bookshelves or books access, books for our children, for diverse books, name it, whatever we want to, given what we are. But it would be a collaborative community venture where we have all our nonprofits come in, even our businesses that participate and have businesses in the community to begin to contribute their time, their money, and so forth to begin, so that we can raise money and develop it as an annual or twice a year fundraiser, so that we could begin to provide money for our libraries and our school libraries too, right? That we can do that. So those are just a couple of ideas that came to mind, when you said, because we work really well with our nonprofits in my school district, in reaching families and reaching children, after school programs, before school programs, and so the kids can have access to not just books, but also STEM and STEAM aspects, so that they're inspired to learn. So,
yeah, that's great. And I so appreciate this question. It's pushing me a little bit, and I like that. So, I think one of the best ways that you can support is to share the resources like those that we've shared today with the educators and other parents in your community. Not only as a way to help provide space where they can learn something that they don't know, but also to say, I'm a member of the community and this is something that matters to me. It matters so much that I'm engaging in this outside of, in addition to all that I do, and I want to share that with you. I think that helps spread the word about the good work that's happening in the nonprofit sector in this area all around us in my state of Maine, and in many ways as well. I think another thing that can be really helpful is to see the people who are doing the work and support the people who are doing the work in ways that have meaning for them. And so finding out and connecting with the organizations, big and small, within your communities who are engaging this work, and maybe asking, what do you need? It may be money, it may be time, it may be support, it may just be being seen that's helpful to know, we're noticed, our good work is being noticed. That's what I would offer in answer to that question.
That's great. Any other questions, Jennifer?
Sure, I will share One more, if you guys have some guidance on this one. First, a big thank you for all of the wonderful links shared. And the question is, as a white educator, how do I ensure that the books I'm selecting are not stereotypical? I understand the obvious, but want to proceed with caution and care.
I think the first thing I would say in response to that is I hear that question and I feel that question. I think we all carry that with us when we make selections. Even, I'm a woman of color, of mixed race descent, but I cannot always know or see stereotypes when they're portrayed in cultures that I don't know about or I don't have a lived experience with. And so know that it is a shared burden that we all face, no matter how close we are to this work or not. And know that you're gonna make mistakes, that you're not going to be able to avoid that. That's part of this work. I've been teaching about and talking about race and racial identity during childhood for 20 years now, and I still find it to be challenging. It's a little stressful. It's a muscle that only strengthens with exercise, though. So if you do find that you've made a mistake or selected a book where there is something that someone draws to your attention, just know that that's okay. Own it, learn about it, and make a decision about how or what you want to do with that book moving forward, if it needs to be removed from a collection or if it can be used and highlighted in an educational way to help teach others what you've just learned. In terms of book quality, maybe I'll let Barbara talk about that, because I think as a creator, there's a different connection to thinking about detecting quality, both in the textual and visual representations of books.
Right. And, it's really difficult if you're not from the culture. And, our Latino culture is not monolithic either. When I was, and I'm going to give this example so that you understand, there are different linguistic varieties of Spanish. I was commissioned by Rigby to do quote translation. I called it interpretation, adaptation later, because it's not translation. So I had Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Southern Texans, New Mexicans, Californians, Arizonians, people from Mexico. And I would have them adapt the text, right? So that and then I would spread it out and pick the cadence, or what would represent, the meaning, what would represent the meaning and the authenticity. So in terms of culture, likewise, but as a white person, you wouldn't know that. Me also, I knew that I didn't know all the varieties of the languages, or even some of the subtleties of the cultural nuances. I then traveled all over Latin America. There are certain things that, even though you speak the same language, quote the same language, there are cultural differences. You can't say certain things in certain contexts. And so I would ask my colleagues, well, why is that offensive? So my advice to you is to, well, also what Krista said, but also, ask colleagues that you trust to share with you if you got in your gut you think it's offensive, then you need to go find someone to tell you why it's offensive, or that it isn't sitting right. So that's the way I would do it, because that's what I've done, with even within my own Latino culture, right? There's so many nuances. That's what I would do.
Okay, awesome. I think we have time, Jennifer, for maybe one last question before story time.
Sure, I think this is a very interesting one. What are your thoughts on elementary school libraries celebrating Black History Month, for example? Should librarians continue to bring extra attention to titles by Black authors and about Black culture, or should it fall away in favor of more thinking like every day could be Black History Day or Women's History Day, or perhaps both? Interested in just your perspectives.
Okay, if we can keep your responses to 2 minutes each. Who wants to
Sure.
start?
No, I can probably go further than that. I think it's a both and. I think it's an everyday and then an opportunity to take a deeper dive and to think about the, you know, African American History Month in terms of digging in and being in tune with the current moment and conversations that are happening and realities for children's lives during that month. But I say both and.
So do I, both and also connecting all the cultures as well, if we can, every day. There's Afro-Latinos, you know, there are mixed race, biracial leaders and authors. I think we need to do it every day. And then also highlight, yeah, it is like right now it's Latino Heritage Month. And yeah, and then but we should be doing it every day. It shouldn't just be that month, but I get it that we want to highlight, you know, for that month, fine. And we need to write more stories, guys. We need to write more stories because there's such a dearth of stories and there's so many everyday heroes and sheroes that we need to start writing about. So, okay.
Yeah.
I so appreciate that the links have been helpful as we think about all of these questions, because they're all really important. And I so appreciate everyone in the audience and everyone on the screen. And reading is fundamental for engaging in this work. It is not easy work. It is hard work. It is not comfortable work. But it is work that needs to be done in support of our children and their healthy development, regardless of their background and heritage. A couple more links that I'll share in case they're of interest to you. I'm Your Neighbor Books is another nonprofit organization based here in Maine that provides services for school libraries in terms of the purchase or rental of a curated set of books featuring immigrant characters that are relevant nationally and or for your community in particular. So if you're looking for a curated list, if you're really looking to think about a clear vetting of quality, that is one resource for that. They also provide within the books curricular suggestions and learning questions to help guide thinking about how the books might intersect with curriculum in various ways. As well as Our Shelves is another a generalized book boxing service focused on diversity. Is another one that I would recommend kind of seeking connection with as a parent, if that's something that you would be interested in receiving a regular delivery of books that have been vetted and curated for quality and content for different age groups of children. Those are two other, you know, connections that might be helpful.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all again for joining us here tonight. This was so great. And again, if you have any questions that we weren't able to answer tonight, I'm sure the RIF team will get back to you. And I think they're going to put that in the question box. Jennifer or whoever's there behind the scenes.
We're jumping right now.
Okay, great. So they will get that in the question box. So if you have any questions that were not able to be answered tonight, you can direct them there. Other than that, Jennifer, did you have any closing words from RIF for our guests?
Just a very big thank you to everybody for joining us tonight and for everyone for participating. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone. And don't forget, if you're still there, don't forget, next week we do have another webinar series, and that one is called, what is that one called, Jennifer?
Diverse Books in Practice, October 14th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. If you registered for this one, you're automatically registered for the second one, so we really hope to see you online then with another wonderful set of panelists and moderator. So we'll look forward to it.
Yay. Okay, awesome. Okay, with that, good night, everyone. Thank you for joining.